We wore a uniform for the same reason that armies have worn uniform from the dawn of history. When you are attacked and when you have to fight, you want to recognize your own people in the fight. And in every country, communism came out to smash every new movement. Not only my party, Churchill, everybody else was shouted down by the communists. I had to defend my meetings, and to defend my meetings, I had to wear uniform. That was the origin of the uniform, and the only link we had with these countries, except that I did not want an European war.
But Sir Oswald, it occurs to me, why call yourself a fascist and wear a black uniform when you knew the effect that this would have on people at the time? You just had to be identified with Hitler and Mussolini.
Because it would have been so dishonest to call myself anything else for this reason, that we were wearing uniform, we were fighting communism, and we stood for strong nationalist movements. If I'd called myself the Young Men's Christian Association, I'd have been looked on, and rightly looked on, as a humbug. And therefore it was a thing which was unavoidable. But as we explained at the time, and still more now, fascism was a completely different creed in each country. It was a creed of Renaissance, but suited to the country in which its roots came out.
There's a nice quote. Can I just give you a nice quote from the book? He's quoting Claude Coburn, who probably would like to have been here tonight, but he's in hospital. He was in hospital during the week down in Cork. He's unwell. And Claude Coburn is talking about he was a member at that time, at your time, of the National Council of Civil Liberties, not the National Council in London. And Claude Coburn says, it's fashionable to allege that we were starry-eyed idealists, but all the same we certainly knew where to put the razor blades in the potato when it came to a fight.
Gay, now come on,
So
come on, Gay, come on.
Yes?
Can we please take this a little more seriously? I mean, I think this is a terribly important issue we're discussing here.
I'm taking it very seriously.
No, I'm sorry, I don't think you're taking it sufficiently seriously. I mean, can we have a little less joking? Now, it's not surprising.
Where are the jokes, dear?
You're being very genial. You have a very genial elderly man sitting beside you now. Can I make my point? I'm very nervous, and I think this is very important. It's not surprising that before an Irish audience, people do not remember or know very much about Sir Oswald Mosley, and there are only a few of us in the audience who do. Now, I can't remember the 30s because I wasn't around, but if people like Sir Oswald Mosley had had their way, I wouldn't be around today, because I'm Jewish. And Sir Oswald Mosley was the leader of the British Union of Fascists. Now, it's not just a matter of saying it would have been dishonest to not to call himself fascist. If I can quote from that book what it says about his wife in that book. His wife Diana fell under Hitler's spell and to this day tend to idealize him. It's not a matter of dishonesty. They were associated with, they were friendly with the leading fascists of the day. And Sir Oswald Mosley stood up on platforms day after day, week after week, particularly in areas where there were large Jewish populations, and incited the non-Jewish people in those areas to attack those populations. And what Sir Oswald Mosley wanted to see was people like me, never born, wanted to see what finally happened, which was 6 million Jews went to their graves, went to their deaths through the concentration camps. Now, I actually think it's something of an obscenity to have this old man here without having equally somebody who can give facts and figures to destroy the total lies he's been telling us. I think it's very, very unfair to an Irish audience. Now, this is a country which has a great sense of history, and I think it's very important. And why are the British reviewers, who you mentioned, unforgiving? Unforgiving. We're talking about someone who was associated with people who murdered 6 million Jews, who caused the deaths of millions of others. They're unforgiving because that book attempts to rewrite history, to deny the truth. I mean, it would be like denying that people like Connolly had existed. It would be that sort of thing.
All right, would you let Sir Oswald answer that? It's a very serious charge, and you speak very well.
Just because time is passing, I would like to make a few points. You have a circulation.
Take one at a time.
Well, he will have a circulation of the book to get his opinion.
Well, wait a minute now. Let's take one at a time. That's a very serious accusation and a very good point. Yes, you can.
I'd like to, if I may, to come back to the whole question of violence. The strange idea that I wanted to break up my own meetings, that I was responsible for violence when I was defending them. Please let me come back to that, but I'll deal with this lady certainly. Certainly. Now, first of all, her attack on my wife, what is stated in the book is complete nonsense. She wasn't under the spell of anybody. I think perhaps not even of her husband, anyhow not of Hitler. But I sent her to Germany and to Italy, anywhere I could, when I couldn't go myself, to find out what these people were like, for one reason. I didn't want another world war, having fought in the First World War and lost all my friends. Now, you now listen to the answer. You put a very long question, and the answer is very straight and very easy. You're accusing me of anti-Semitism and wanting to murder Jews. You're trying to repeat the sort of silly lie with which young people are fed up. When a young man went into the criminal court with a weapon he was charged with using, and the magistrate, who was a Jewish, said, why did you have that weapon? Because I wanted to do the speaker. You mean you wanted to murder Sir Oswald Mosley? Yes. Why? Because Hitler killed my mother and he's going to kill my sister. This was in the last few years. A filthy lie deliberately propagated by some people to create further violence. Now, you're going to hear the answer. You're going to hear the answer. And you can get the answer out of, you can get the answer out of Skidelsky's book, if you like, who's a hostile witness in this respect to me for fairly obvious reasons. Now, what happened was this.
What are the obvious reasons?
There's no obvious reasons. That book is a total whitewash.
I'm going to deal with the Jewish question, which has been, I've been charged with wanting to murder Jews and all the old nonsense, and I'm going to answer it. When I started our movement, I ran as candidates Jews. Ted Kid Lewis, the welterweight champion of the world. I was always addicted to sport. Listen a moment. What you can't bear is to hear the effective answer to the nonsense you're talking. I ran Jews as candidates. I had absolutely no anti-Semitic feeling. I had many lifelong Jewish friends who are my friends today. What happened was that 2 years after that, or sooner, within 1 year of me starting, it was perfectly plain that some Jews, not all Jews, for instance, the Board of Deputies did not do it, that some Jews were agitating for war, for a boycott of German goods, and not only doing that, were attacking my meetings with organized violence, as many people admitted who were my opponents. And at that moment, and not before, I denounced Jews who were trying to bring a world war just as I would have denounced anybody else, Hottentots or Eskimos. Nothing to do with it whatever. The reason was that the Jews were trying to bring, some Jews were trying to bring a world war, and I was determined to stop it. Right. And that is why they circulate lies about me until this very day.
Right. Yeah. Can I point out that at the time the British Union of Fascists was active, it was doing a number of things. For example, it was deliberately marching or attempting to march through London, through the Jewish areas of London. Forgive me, Sir Oswald Mosley, my parents and my grandparents were living in those areas, where your thugs were marching, trying to terrorize people. That's one of the things that was happening. And secondly, he talks about Jews agitating for war. At the time that the British Union of Fascists was active, Jews were being locked up in Germany for the simple reason that they were Jews. Now, if Sir Oswald Mosley wants to deny that, he's not just denying me. He will be denying the findings of the Nuremberg trials, where there were British, American, Russian and French judges who proved conclusively that all through the 30s and right through the Second World War, millions of people, millions of Jews and millions of other disinherited people like gypsies who had nobody to argue for them, were murdered, were slaughtered, were brutally tortured in ways that are just too horrifying to hear. We know that, but this man is being given airtime with nobody else who was there to answer him.
What do you mean? You're here denying him. You're here denying him.
I'm sorry, Mr. Byrne, it's quite different. You have him as the main speaker. Why didn't you find one of the leading people, and there are a great many of them in London, why didn't you get one of the main leading people to come along and answer this message?
Now, see, the lady's just made my whole case. She said, in effect, that we should have a war, because some of her compatriots were being badly treated in Germany. Now you're jabbering again instead of listening to the answer. I said we should not have a war because of minorities being persecuted in another country. We'd have a war against practically every country in the world, certainly against Soviet Russia, certainly against Turks and other people. If every time some minority was having a bad time, we had to go to war. Why should you Jews alone? Why should you Jews alone provoke a world war? Because some of your friends were having a bad time. You prove my case and you prove it up to the hilt.
This seems to me...
Can I say something, please?
Yeah.
I'd like to take... You see, it's very common in the British landed class to oppose capitalism in one form or another. You would expect that it's only people in the working class and socialists who do that. But that isn't true. Historically, people like Sir Oswald have opposed the particular framework they found themselves in. And they've taken various stances on that, and they've done it sometimes with integrity and sometimes with ability. And in fact, what Sir Oswald mentioned a while ago, and obviously thinks that he has plenty of it, was this integrity and ability. Now, I put it to Sir Oswald that it really is a question of politics, that it's not a question of the individual person and his ability to tell the truth or his ability to act. Now, I will hand him this, he's a practiced man at using the media, and he has pushed in a bit of demagoguery tonight about the Irish situation, and anyone who didn't see that needs to have their head examined. But what in fact we were talking about in the 30s, or what happened in the 30s, was a crisis in a political situation. Now, what must be looked at then is the attitude that people took towards the solution of that problem. The attitude Sir Oswald took was that there were sinister forces somewhere around the world, or there were elites in power who were responsible for this, and once an attack was conducted on them, that then the problem would be solved. He did throw in a few economic suggestions that have since been adopted, but it's quite clear, and I would agree with him, that these things weren't effective. But instead of trying to solve these things, he went along with the whole wave of hysteria.